If you sit in the mud, you'll get your head in the mud. It seems that this is the real slogan of the OCU. 2 days ago, the head of the OCU in Chernivtsi, Feognost Bodoryak, held an urgent briefing after the complete failure of the OCU's attempt to seize the cathedral in Chernivtsi by force. The bloodshed, banditry, and public disgrace did not help. And so, Bodoryak decided to consolidate these achievements and polish them with 40 minutes of unique nonsense and clumsy lies in front of the media cameras. Today, we will quickly analyze Mr. Bodoryak's main hits. The barbaric attack on the Holy Spirit Cathedral of the UOC in Chernivtsi, which also failed, became a serious image blow for the OCU and those who stand behind it and do its dirty work for it. The brutal beating of priests by hired OCU militants, bandit robbery and sacrilege in the cathedral, footage of the Chernivtsi carnage and the mockery of the shrine by savages brought in by the OCU became known to the whole world, as did the courageous resistance of the Orthodox Bukovinians to this terror, from which they emerged victorious. June 17th became a day of double shame for the OCU, because its raiders not only shed blood and showed all their insides, but were also shamefully expelled from the shrine by thousands of parishioners of the Holy Spirit Cathedral. Even the police, who were their full ally and partner in crime that day, did not help the militants, except that they helped them evacuate the crime scene unharmed. But if you think that this incident forced the management of the Chernivtsi OCU to rethink something and publicly admit their guilt, or at least remain silent with shame after such an exposure, you do not know this branch of the Ministry of Culture well. The state church of the OCU in the totalitarian state of Zelensky is too confident that they will be able to cover up anything for it, any of its crimes and jams, and also to distort reality through the servile media in such a way that one can boldly call a white circle a black triangle, and the so-called journalists will accept this version as a revelation, without objections and unnecessary questions. That is why, despite the fact that the truth about the crimes of the Epiphany structure could not be hidden, the head of the Bukovina OCU Feognost Bodoryak arranged a briefing for the media, at which he lied so openly that it even becomes embarrassing. Bodoryak has once again proven that he heads an anti-Christian organization, the gods of which do not forbid lying and shedding blood, where apparently there is nothing sacred except the goal of taking away what belongs to others and sowing hatred for the church. And for this, any methods are acceptable. It seems to us that if anyone still believed that the reputation of the OCU in Bukovina was not buried by the attempt to seize the cathedral, then the briefing of its leader Feognost definitely buried it. Today we will analyze the main lie that the leader of the Bukovina OCU squeezed out of himself. In general, this picture causes a feeling of déjà vu. We see an almost identical repetition of the Cherkasy scheme, a bandit blow to the heart, to the cathedral, and then an attempt to twist reality and justify their crimes. Then in the fall of 2024, the OCU raiders staged a similar press show after the brutal carnage in the St. Michael's Cathedral of the UOC in Cherkasy. The local head of the OCU, Ivan Yaremenko, also organized a briefing at which he lied about the actions of the militants. But let's move on to Bodoryak himself. Bodoryak was first asked who owned the Holy Spirit Cathedral.
В лютому місяці цього року вірні міста Chernivtsi. In February of this year, the faithful of the city of Chernivtsi, namely the church, the cathedral of the descent of the Holy Spirit, voted to withdraw from the jurisdiction of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. And they wrote a corresponding appeal to accept them into the church jurisdiction of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The meeting took place. There was a large number of parishioners where their signatures and the minutes of the meeting are certified, where accordingly, after that, they were successfully accepted. The charter of the church was drawn up, and they were registered with the relevant state bodies. Therefore, the community of the Descent of the Holy Spirit, the cathedral in the main one belongs to the Orthodox community of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Yes, there are documents, there is a legal extract, there is a certified document. You could have seen it repeatedly in the media. If this were not the case, then of course the community would have defended its rights differently to this day. То, звичайно, громада би до сьогоднішнього дня відстоювала свої права інакше.
The head of the Chernivtsi OCU could not help but lie from the very beginning. He first misspoke that some faithful of the city of Chernivtsi, and then went on to say that faithful of the Holy Spirit Cathedral voted for the transition to the OCU. Bodoryak forgot to add that this crowd, which he gathered then under the walls of the shrine, voted in one package for 3 temples of the UOC at once. This farce of the serial raiders of the OCU, the Hristyuks, who called random people to vote, failed from the very beginning from a legal, moral and informational point of view, and even from a common sense standpoint. Let us recall that it was February 16th, that is, on Sunday, when all practicing Orthodox Christians were in their churches. The Holy Spirit community served the liturgy in its cathedral, as it should be, but this so-called community gathered on the square for its own rally. Various characters took part in it, from a well-known Kyiv LGBT activist to the director of the song and dance ensemble, from the party activists of the Chernivtsi European Solidarity to the clergy of the OCU, who a priori cannot represent the operating community of the UOC, not to mention non-believers, because, according to locals, even representatives of non-Orthodox confessions voted, which has already become a good tradition and a sign of the quality of transfers to the OCU. Well, that is, a political rally of those who want everything to be OCU. Instead of icons and banners, flags fluttered on the square. No relation to the actual community of the UOC Cathedral. And the most striking thing is that this crowd was so unchurched and ignorant that no one was surprised that the same people in the same place and on the same day were voting on behalf of 3 different churches of the city for their transition to the OCU, without being in any of them, and without the participation of their rectors. At this time, in the Holy Spirit Cathedral itself, numerous representatives of the parish present at the Sunday service unanimously declared that they remained within the bosom of the UOC. About 4,500 people registered and voted. For comparison, about 2,000 people allegedly took part in the street action of the OCU, where an unprecedented package vote for 3 churches took place together, according to the lists, who, however, are difficult to count in the photos and videos from the scene of the events, perhaps 500, 700. However, even if there were a fan thousand of them there, this would not add legitimacy to the fraudulent gatherings. However, this quantitative comparison once again shows the unpopularity of the OCU and its methods in Orthodox Chernivtsi. So, on February 16th, the scale of the OCU raiding was so obvious that documents were taken all the way to the Lviv region for illegal re-registration. And there, secretly, thanks to administrative resources and corruption, they fraudulently rewrote the UOC Community Council to the OCU boss Bodoryak, by the hand of a woman who already had OCU awards for her fruitful work. What doubts can there be that the Holy Spirit Cathedral now belongs to the OCU, right? You see, they even have papers about it in their hands. Only Russian agents can doubt and deny this. Let's move on.
The temple does not belong to me, but to the community that is the parishioners of this temple. Yes, this is any temple on the territory of Ukraine. Yes, at the request of the faithful, the first Ukrainian prayer was announced in the Ukrainian temple, the cathedral, the ancient temple, the historical temple, descent of the Holy Spirit. Our priests came to pray, where the faithful also came. Only when we announced all this, unknown persons, namely representatives of the Russian Orthodox Church of Ukraine, this is the Moscow Patriarchate, or the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, were already prepared and opposed the entry of the faithful of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine into the temple.
І протистояла входженню в храм вірним Православної Церкви України.
How is it not belong to him when Yaroslav Bodoryak was registered as the head? They were in such a hurry to get this re-registration done that they even made grammatical mistakes. It is important that Bodoryak stated about some priests and believers of the OCU who came to the cathedral that day. Remember this moment. What a lying creature he is, after all. The head of the Chernivtsi OCU states that the faithful of the UOC, whom he stigmatizes as the Moscow Church, were ready for something there. Look at the footage from the surveillance cameras, how these priests and believers of the OCU appeared. Look at the frightened parishioners of the cathedral, who look in horror at the atrocities of the militants, having only mops and rags as weapons. Look at the priests who are being beaten to the ground by Bodoryak's boys. According to the scoundrel, they are ready for something there. We even regret that the cathedral was really not ready for the attack. There was not enough security with special means, and the faithful of the UOC or the security were not able to protect themselves, their health, and the temple of God from the attackers. But then Bodoryak's lie becomes more massive.
Не змогли захистити себе, своє здоров'я і храм Божий від нападників. Але далі брехня Бодоряка стає більш масштабною.
Хто ці люди, які саме побили
I don't know who these people are who beat the priests of that church. They are not parishioners, believers of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. But as we know, there are quite a few patriotic people in Ukraine who are ready to defend the rights of Ukraine in this terrible aggression of Russia against Ukraine. Therefore, this is probably the work of law enforcement agencies. Let them investigate, search, and so on. This is not our issue. These are not our parishioners. Yes, there were priests there. The priests went into the church who had already seen the terrible picture where all these beatings took place. I myself have seen all those videos that are circulating in the media. The only thing that surprises me is why there are no complete video recordings, yes, but only excerpts. Those that are beneficial today for the propaganda of the Russian world and Russian television, where it circulates all over the world.
Пропаганді руського міра і російським телебаченням, де воно сьогодні гуляє в цілому світі.
Подивіться в ці очі, жодного каяття, жодного визнання.
Look into these eyes, no remorse, no admission of responsibility, only cunning and phenomenally undisguised lies. This is how either the mentally retarded lie, or those who are sure that they are surrounded by stupid slaves, confident in their impunity. A couple of minutes ago, Bodoryak talked about the priests and believers of the OCU. Now he doesn't know these believers. They seem to have just materialized. Moreover, the militants, it turns out, are not parishioners, believers of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Strange. And who were they then? And how did it happen that they arrived at the cathedral territory in the same bus with the OCU clerics Chokalyuk and Kaprian? What a strange coincidence. As well as the fact that for some reason they organized the cleansing of the cathedral precisely for these OCU priests. It does not happen that unknown persons somehow arrive at the cathedral in the same bus with OCU functionaries, work in their interests and remain unknown. And one more thing, if you say that you do not know who they are, then how do you know that they are not parishioners of the OCU? Do you know all the OCU believers by sight? Hardly. Or maybe you asked these bandits what religion they are, or did you simply know about it before? Well, the fact that Bodoryak calls thugs and bandits patriotically minded, defending the interests of Ukraine, is not only a factual admission that the bandits acted in his favor, but also an encouragement of such actions. He did not condemn, on the contrary, he morally approved their actions. That is, well done, they did the right thing, they are fighting the enemy, the Orthodox Bukovinians, they are beating the priests of the UOC, that's patriotic. And here we will go through the lies of the moral cripple Bodoryak in detail. At 1427, the cathedral surveillance cameras show an interesting couple entering the sanctuary, a young bull who is rolling another one on a wheelchair. 1445, a bus drives into the territory of the cathedral, from which militants and a couple of women immediately jump out. The militants run into the sanctuary. Bodoryak's boy immediately heals and gets up from the wheelchair, and the militants begin a pogrom of the cathedral. 1448, another bus drives into the territory of the sanctuary. OCU militants also run out of it, and with them, the OCU cleric Chokalyuk, the official administrator of the Chernivtsi OCU. According to some reports, he is the uncle of Epiphany himself. Right in front of Chokalyuk, militants are beating Orthodox clergy, but he is not bothered by this. He enters the cathedral and calls someone at 1451. At 1454, a message from Bodoryak appears in the Viber group of the OCU. It seems that it was he who was called by Chokalyuk reporting that they were in the cathedral. Bodoryak joyfully reports this, urging his accomplices to go to the city. This is not discussed, even. It was not only Chokalyuk who was caught on camera. Together with another OCU cleric, Vasil Kaprian, they were closing the door to the sexton room, and then they broke the surveillance cameras. Bodoryak does not know who his clerics arrived with in the bus, random fellow travelers. What a clumsy lie. The only thing that the not-so-far-off imagination of the OCU has come up with to answer this is to say that the videos from the cameras were supposedly cut, a pathetic attempt to cover up all this horror. Mr. Raider Bodoryak, we will gladly provide you with a full and uncut video of the crimes of your people, committed in the name of your organization, and to seize the cathedral, fraudulently transferred to you. You can contact us on Telegram, and for now, look again at how brutally Bodoryak's militants beat for the Roman Forost, and then drag him outside the territory of the shrine. How they beat for Vitali, how they beat for Dmitro and his son right at the altar. Is this how they show their patriotic attitude? Right, Mr. Bodoryak? Do they defend the interests of Ukraine in this way? Truly, the OCU has nothing to do with Christianity or the interests of Ukraine. This is the work of the bloody hands of the OCU, and they will not wash it away, as well as the shame of their complete defeat. Look at how the Bodoryak militants are released through the corridor to the police cars. Who is running with his tail tucked in with everyone? Who is trying to hide his face? That's right, it's still the same ЧОКЮЧА, literally Bodoriak's right hand. It's strange. Why is he hiding his face? Why is he running with the so-called unknowns? The Chernivtsi liar in the cassock was also asked about the St. Nicholas Cathedral of the UOC, which the OCU raiders tried to get to. The serial OCU raider Hryshchuk and his accomplices broke into the St. Nicholas Cathedral that day, literally broke the gate. At least Bodoriak is not trying to lie about it. And here is the camera recording of how Hryshchuk, Hergulyuk and others got into the shrine. The most ironic thing about this situation is that the small gate was not closed. Hryshchuk, from old memory, decided to break down the main gate without even thinking of opening it. Bodoriak was also not born with a mind, because later he actually confessed to his barbarity. The Chernivtsi head of the OCU was asked if he was in contact with the SBU.
Of course, we communicate with all the heads of the security agencies. We report on each of our events, which are so large and large scale. Since we live in difficult times, therefore, yes, everyone knew about it.
We report on each of our events, which are large scale. So it's still your event, right? And large scale too. And who created this scale? There were no OCU worshippers visible on the site, only a gang of young people. The scumbag couldn't resist showing off his connections with the security forces and let it out. And there was a connection, and a very active one. The fact is that together with the militants, the deputy chief of the regional police, head of the Department of Preventive Activities of the main directorate of the National Police in Chernivtsi region, Sviatoslav Kishlar, appeared on the territory of the shrine. This atrocity was happening before the eyes of the security forces, which they did not stop. They actually covered the militants and raiders until the very end. They did not arrest them when they beat people, they brought them back to the territory and then evacuated and released them after the defeat, and cover it until now. As you can see, it is not difficult to refute Bodoriak's lies. Even when they find themselves in a full vat of filth, the activists and raiders of the OCU do not stop diving in search of even more sludge from the very bottom. Atrocities and cruelty are not just acceptable to them, they are the main tools of the so-called development of the local church. And they are trying to force Orthodox Ukrainians to join this anti-Christian, thoroughly lying and criminal organization. A low bow to the Chernivtsi, real warriors, modern heroes. And we thank all of you, our viewers and subscribers, for all this time supporting the struggle of the Orthodox Bukovinians with prayer and information, sending us videos, useful information, conducting streams and spreading the truth. And thank you for the collection for the treatment of beaten priests. Instead of 200,000, you collected more than 250 at the time of recording this video. May God save you. This fight is not over yet. Subscribe, stay faithful.
Підписуйтесь, лишайтеся вірними.